So, hello and good morning to the webinar for the EUdatathon 2019. I'm very pleased to welcome you all online, and I'm very happy to welcome all our partners in this call. My name is Simon Steuer. I'm from the Publications Office of the European Union, and we are organizing this competition together with several partners, and some of them will present today their interesting data sets. Today will be about challenge number 2, which is called New Insights in Economics and Finance. What do we want from you? So we would like that you combine the data sets which are presented today or any other of their websites, for example, from the European Central Bank, from the DG Budget, from DG ECFIN, from the European Investment Bank, European Investment Fund, or Eurostat, with any other open data set or closed data set. For example, you could have a look at the EU Open Data Portal or the European Data Portal to get some ideas. The goal of this whole challenge is to create new insights, business model, or business concepts through open data. What you can win? So the first prize is 15,000 euros in this challenge, the second prize 7,000, and the third one 3,000. So about these webinars, everything is always published on the webinars tab, and here we will also upload later on this webinar, and we upload even more material. What you can see, for example, here for the European Central Bank, our partners created documents where we summarize all the information which is necessary, and that might be really helpful for you to better understand the data, to get a quick overview, and then you can dive into. As soon as you have a great idea, please do your project registration until the 24th of March. And we will be really happy to get a lot of proposals, and we would also be happy to select you, of course, as a shortlisted team. For this webinar, please mute your microphones, and if you have any questions, you can raise them in the chat box. And now, with no further ado, maybe I tell you something about the program. So the first presentation will be from Pierre Newman from the European Central Bank. Then we have Ingo Kunert and Christian Geier from the European Commission General Direction ECFIN. And then we have Isabel Tres from the European Investment Bank. And now, with no further ado, I will pass the floor to Pierre. Please, Pierre, can you share your screen?
Right, good morning to everyone, and thank you very much, Simon, for this introduction. I would first like to thank the official publication for organizing the EUdatathon and the Romanian presidency of the EU, and we are pleased to be associated with this data competition. My name is Pierre Newman. I'm an advisor at the European Central Bank, and I've been part, among others, to establish the statistical data side of the ECB. And what you might not know is that the ECB is one of the two statistical systems in Europe. So one is with the ECB and all the national central banks, and the other statistical system is Eurostat and all the national statistical offices. So the ECB has a lot of data that it provides to the public as a public good. In particularly, our domain is on the monetary and financial side of statistics. So anything on the economical side of our economy, of our sectors, and also anything that happens on the financial markets. And for this competition, we have at least thought of 6 different data sets or domains that we can offer, but there's more information in our flagship data warehouse. But the 6 data sets that we think could be of interest to you is one relating to money, credit, and banking statistics. So these are all the balance sheet statistics that each single bank in the euro area reports to the ECB. and is part of the monetary aggregate, so the M3, which is one of our cross-reference checks for our monetary policy. Maybe on your screen you see the slide. So this is simply just to indicate to you that the ECB responsibilities has been enlarged after the financial crisis. So the ECB is not only taking care of the monetary policy of the euro, we are also in charge of the financial stability, and we also have the supervision of the largest, around 120 large banks in the euro area. So these are the three main domains, and this is where these 6 data sets belong. Now, for the data sets about money, credit, and banking statistics, we also have external statistics, and that relates to the balance of payments and international investment positions. And this summarizes all the transaction and position between euro area residents and non-euro area residents, both on a monthly and a quarterly basis. So these are all about transactional in and out of the euro area. The third domain is sectoral statistics. So this is the sectoral account, and this means the breakdown of economic activity of all residents at the institutional sector, so the banking sector, the financial sector, the other financial institutions, and households and investment funds, so all the different sectors in our economy, and how these accounts are broken down into the activities and who they are having the economical activity with. So it's both flows and stocks of the households and the non-financial corporation, and financial corporation and governments, and also how they interact with each other and the rest of the world. The next data set is a survey that we conduct. So these are 2 surveys that we think would be of interest. Both, one is on the survey of access to finance of small enterprises. So this survey information provides information on the latest development of the financial situation of the corporate sector, so enterprises, and the respective trends in their access to finance. And the other survey which could be of interest is our household finance consumption survey. And this is a survey that collects information on the assets and liabilities and income and consumption of households. The next data set we think could be of interest for you to work with relating to financial markets and interest rates. So these are how the banks charge both the households and the corporate sector of interest rates, levels and volumes. In particular, for instance, if you want to purchase a house and you're looking for a loan, so what are the different rates that banks charge for housing purchases at different maturities. It also contains information about security issues, so who is issuing debt securities in Europe, and also who is holding securities in Europe, and has a lot of information relating to financial market interest rates, money market rates, and also ECB official rates as such. The next data set that I would like to highlight relates to our new responsibility relating to banking supervision. So we also therefore collect supervisory data and prudential statistics. And there's a separate website on the banking supervision website, not only the ECB website, but also a banking supervisory website where there is data relating to the balance sheet composition and profitability of banks, capital equity and leverage, funding, liquidity and asset quality. And what we also publish is information relating to individual banks, in particular on their solvency and leverage ratios and their risk-weighted assets. So these are just small taster of the 6 different data domains that we would envisage that you could have an interest in using, and combining this data set with some of the other data sets that is part of this program and endeavor or of course any other data sets that exist in the public domain. Now, just my last comment is how to then access our data and where to find. So first, Simon showed that on the EUdatathon website, you have a copy of these 6 data sets that is available on the EUdatathon website. And in this document, there are hyperlinks to all the respective individual data sets. Otherwise, you can go to our statistical data warehouse, which is accessible from the ECB main statistics, ECB website, and then ECB statistics. And then we also have accessibility via a website called Our Statistics. So if you just go in and Google Our Statistics, you would come up to a website that has core sets of ECB statistics and its presentation using visualization and common language. I think that provided a little bit overview of how you could use our data and what is the content, but I'm of course open for any questions or suggestions you may have.
So thank you very much, Pierre. Maybe I just show it again. So that's the document you was referring to. And here you have all the different points like the methodology, access to the data, and for all the data sets he mentioned. And I think that could be really useful for you to get a quick overview. About your data, Pierre, what is the license? So for example, if I want to create an application with your data, is it an open license? Is it free for me? Do I need to quote you, or what's the status there?
Well, as any source that everyone is using, and this is of course common practice, one will always source it as ECB statistics. So this is common practice, but we want that all data that we have is a public good and to be used by everyone who wishes to use it. So we are fostering an open policy of using statistics as a public good.
Okay, and then we reached one question in the chat box. How often is the data updated? I think it's quite individual, but maybe you can answer it.
Yes, most statistics is on a monthly basis.
Okay.
But we also have quarterly and annual, but the frequency that we normally release, and there's a release calendar on our website on the statistics webpage that shows the release calendar of each single data set. But it's basically monthly. Okay,
great, thank you. And one last question, what we received was a way to access the data, because our participants, of course, they want to automate as much as possible. They want to get huge amounts of data. Is there a way to, if you have an API or something like this, Pierre?
Okay, so yes, this is a good question. So we have download functionality, so there's various ways of accessing our data. But the most efficient one is to use the web services of our statistical data warehouse, where you can automatically download the bulk of data that you're interested in. Otherwise, on our statistics website, you can download the individual data sets that takes the data directly from the SDW, from our statistical data warehouse.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Then I would pass the floor to our colleagues Ingo Kunert and Christian Geier. Maybe you can share your screen. Cool. Ingo wants to start, I guess.
Christian, do you want to start? Well, I think then I will do.
Sorry, Ingo.
Yeah.
I think I would like to go first, if possible.
Okay, then please go ahead.
Okay. So.
Can you still hear me, Simon?
Yes. Maybe you can mute your microphone, Pierre.
Indeed.
Okay. So it's my turn now. So my name is Christian Geier. I work in Directorate-General for Economic and Financial Affairs. And we are also happy to participate in this EUdatathon, of course, this year. We will present two kinds of data sets. The one that I will present is our database of business and consumer surveys, which is data that is managed here in DG ECFIN, so Directorate-General for Economic and Financial Affairs. Let me quickly describe what this data is about. So this is qualitative data, these survey data, qualitative in the sense that this is about opinions of managers and consumers. And so they are asked to give a positive, neutral, or negative reply to a question about specific economic concepts. So, for example, production expectations, and then managers can say whether they think that production will go up, will stay the same, or will go down. Or order books, whether they are more than sufficient, or not sufficient. Or similarly, consumers can say whether they expect their financial situation to improve, to deteriorate, or to stay the same. So, and then to quantify this basically qualitative information, one usually computes a balance. And this is the difference between the percentage of positive replies and the percentage of the negative replies. So, and empirically, we see that there is a very close relationship between these balance series of survey data and hard quantitative statistical data. So, for example, on order developments, on production, or on consumer spending. And the advantages of our data, of these survey data, are, of course, their timeliness, because they are published at the end of the month that they refer to. They have a high frequency, namely they are monthly, and they have leading properties. And this is because we ask about people's expectations, about managers' and consumers' expectations about the future. And another advantage is that these data, they cover concepts which are not covered by quantitative statistics. So as I said, it's about expectations. It could also be about price perceptions and so on. So concepts which are not usually covered by the official statistics. So these surveys are part of a EU-wide program which has been there since the 1960s. It has gradually extended in geographical and in sectoral scope, and we now cover all countries in the EU and the candidate countries, and also all sectors of the economy. So I would now like to show you our website. Simon, is this already shared, or?
Yes, we can see it. Thanks.
Okay, so this is the Business and Consumer Surveys webpage on DG ECFIN's website. So maybe I will just to give you a flavor of how we disseminate these data. So here we have monthly press releases. So for example, here I show you the one of November. So this is the publication where we present the headline indicators. Of course, here we don't go into the details, the detailed data that I will show you in a minute. So this is about the headline indicator economic sentiment that you may have heard about. I now go back to the time series. So, but before I click here on the time series to show you the individual data, I would just like to quickly also mention here the methodology part. So here you will have background information on the data. The most important one is this here under methodological guidelines. It takes a while. So this is the user guide. If you click on this, there is a PDF document, and in this user guide you will find all the background about the program, about the survey program, and all the data. So which sectors are covered, what's the exact formulation of the individual questions, so the survey questions that people have to answer to. There is also a section here about the composite indicators, how they are calculated and what the components are. I just mentioned our headline indicator, the economic sentiment indicator, for example, so this is also described here. And then in the annexes, you have a description of all the questionnaires of the individual surveys, so the consumer survey, the retail trade survey, the construction survey, and so on. So here you have all the metadata and all the background information. Now I go back to the time series. So if I now click on time series, so this is where we present our data. This is organized by sector. So here in this first panel, you see the results for the industry survey, then the services, consumers, retail trade, and construction, and so on. And usually the data are organized, or there are separate files for seasonally adjusted series and seasonally unadjusted series, and then you have EU member states and candidate countries. So that's normally the case. And then there are some extra data, namely for industry. For example, we also have here what you see here, mix. This is the main industrial groupings. So we have data not only for the total manufacturing industry, but the results are also broken down to the main industrial groupings, so to producers of investment goods, intermediate goods, and consumer goods. Similarly, for consumers, there are also some more data here, namely this what is called categories here. This is breakdowns of the consumer replies by demographic characteristics, so for example, by age, by sex, by income, and by profession. So these are already quite detailed data, and then we have even more detailed data, namely here detailed data by answer category. So this is the individual percentage shares of positive, unchanged, and negative replies that I mentioned a couple of minutes ago. So before calculating the balance, you have actually more detailed data where you really see how many people or what percentage said that production expectation will go up or will go down, and so on. So if one is interested in a more sophisticated quantification method of the qualitative data, then one might want to have a look at these data. And then one more thing, then here there's subsector data. This is for the business surveys, where we have not only total industry data, but we really have it broken down to the two-digit NACE level, so divisions for industry, for service, and so on. And again, we have seasonally adjusted and unadjusted data for member states and candidate countries. So here you will find really the answers of what the producers of rubber or of metal or of whatever have responded to the surveys. Okay, so now I would like to open one of these files to show you how this looks like. So I will click here on industry, EU member states, seasonally adjusted data. So these are zipped Excel files. And so if I click on this, so this is the most important worksheet here, index, because here you have a description of the structure of the data, the nomenclature. So the series are usually coded as you see it here: country identifier, sector identifier, question, answer, and frequency. So for the countries, we use the usual two-letter codes. So here this is about industry, total industry, And then you have the questions here. I mean, this is important, and so that you know what the individual data are about. So, for example, question 1 is about the assessment of the production trend in recent months, and question 5, for example, would be the production expectations. And then there are codes for the answers, and then for the frequency. So, and the data themselves, so they are here. For example, if we go to whatever industry here, Czechia. So this is the data of the industry survey collected in the Czech Republic. These are total results for manufacturing. It's question 2, so that is the order books assessment. BS means balances, seasonally adjusted, and it's monthly data. So, and all the data that I've talked about before are structured similarly. Yeah, so as I said, these are individual Excel files. If you like, there is also the possibility, instead of looking at these Excel files, most of our data are also available on the Eurostat website. I say most, so I mean there are no sectoral breakdowns, they do not have the consumer categories, and there are not the individual percentage shares. But the balance series of all the monthly and quarterly questions, and also all the composite indicators, are available also on the Eurostat website. And they are available here under Euro indicators, EEEIs. Here, if you click on business and consumer surveys, you will also find here the data tree to access and download the data from the Eurostat webpage. So, just the last word. So these data are quite large. I mean, we have, if we take the seasonally adjusted and the non-seasonally adjusted series, these are around 100,000 series. So I hope this will be a rich data pool for interesting applications of the data. So yeah, that was it for the business and consumer surveys. So I think I will hand over to Ingo now.
Maybe just a few questions, Christian.
Yeah.
There were some questions in the chat box. Are there any CSV files available for your data, or is it all in Excel?
These are Excel files, yes. Yeah. But as I said,
and the files on Eurostat, they are.
Well, this is the usual. I mean, if we click here, I mean, this is. There you have the possibility to select different versions. Huh?
Yeah.
So there you have more possibilities.
Yeah. And the next question was if there is a database access, and as soon as the data is in the Eurostat database, there is a database access, even a JSON API. And for this one, I would refer to the end of the second webinar. And there we had some colleagues from Eurostat, and they presented how to access it, and it's really simple and very nice, nicely done. Well, one more question. So there's less data in Eurostat, right, than on your website?
Yes, I mean there are most of the data is there, but as I said, I mean not this very detailed levels of the breakdowns of the consumer categories. So we really see what the between 25 and 35-year-olds said. On Eurostat, you will only find what all the consumers said, for example, and also the sectoral breakdowns. So the business survey results by really individual division that you will not find there.
And how many years do you cover in the end? It was not really.
Yeah, no, that's an important question. I mean, we usually have data from 1985 onwards. So this is the case usually for the industry survey and for retail and construction and consumers. The services survey started a little later. It only started in the 90s. So there the data started in 95 or so. But
okay, and then over time more and more countries joined, right?
Right, exactly. So whenever a country joined the EU or became a candidate country before that, then they were integrated into the program. Right.
Okay. And is there a way to download all the zip files in bulk on your website, or?
Well, unfortunately, I mean, there is, right. We do not really have a bulk download, but we have also here on this web page, we have this category here, all surveys. So I mean, basically, it's still individual Excel files, but at least we have everything together here in one zipped file.
Okay.
If you want the bulk download, you have to go via the Eurostat website.
And there was just a question where they can get the links. And as we said, also like with the ECB, we also have a fact sheet for DG ECFIN, and here you find all the links, also for the methodology, how to access the data, and this might help. So maybe one more question about the quality of data, because I think that's quite pertinent. If it's survey data, how would you describe the quality?
The quality, well, data quality is a multifaceted concept, but I mean, I would say that these data are very useful and they are of high quality, which shows, for example, through the high correlation that these data have with quantitative statistics. So as I said, for example, our headline indicator, this economic sentiment indicator, is used by analysts and economists and policymakers as a tool to say something about the current state of the economy and the likely future development. So these data are used by many people, and they give a very good view of the shape of the economy.
Okay, thank you very much, Christian. Now I would pass the floor to Ingo.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, perfectly.
I will share my screen. So, 1 second. My name is Ingo Kunert. See my screen now? Yeah. My name is Ingo Kunert. I'm like Christian from the European Commission's Directorate-General for Economic and Financial Affairs, which makes us, let's say, the closest thing you get to a finance ministry in the European Commission. And as such, we are having a significant demand for macroeconomic data. So we're not dealing with the single enterprises, but we're dealing with the entire economy or with important sectors of the economy. And we have one central macroeconomic database, which is called AMECO. The link to that is in the document that Simon has mentioned, but you could also just web search for AMECO and you would get directly to the screen that you are seeing now. So this is the database with the most important macroeconomic variables that we are using. So there is GDP, population, investment figures, debt and deficit. That's say one of our core businesses. The Maastricht criteria, 3% of debt of deficit and 60% of debt. So this is the data that you find there. Now, we are not really in the business of producing statistics. That's something that the statistical offices and the national central banks and the ECB and Eurostat do. So in fact, most of the data that we're having in AMECO is data that comes from Eurostat or from the IMF or from the OECD or from national institutes. So the question is, why would you want to go to AMECO? There is a handful of reasons. The most important one is that our institution is producing forecasts, macroeconomic forecasts, and those are disseminated via AMECO. That's the only way that you get the Commission's forecast. There are other institutions like the IMF, like the OECD, and I think the ECB that are also producing macroeconomic forecasts, but we're all producing our forecasts independently. On the website for AMECO, you see a short description, and you see that you can access it in two ways. One is AMECO Online, which will not be the way that you would be using, but it's a nice way for seeing what's actually inside, and I will use that then. And then go back to the zipped text files. So Ameco Online is here. It opens a web interface where you get a data selection tree. So you see it's the data is organized in 18 different chapters that covers the big parts of the economy, and later the institutional sectors, corporations, households, and the general government sector. That's the one that's of most importance to us. Let's just have a quick look at the domestic product. We take gross domestic product, the volume one, we mark it here, go to next. Well, you get immediately to, say, a data table that has the GDP in for as long as we have it in the database. And you see that because the main interest on our side is in disseminating the forecast, so the data is organized with the most current period to the left. We are currently having data for 2020 and 2019 as the forecasted data inside. And data go back to, that depends a bit on the country and on the variable, but for the main aggregates, we are trying to link back as far as possible. So I think the longest series, and GDP is of course one with the best coverage, they go back to 1960. Now you have some options for changing the display of the data. You can change different countries and different time periods. Also influence the number of decimals here. That's fairly self-evident. We've given a limited number of the units for that depends a bit on the variable. Here the main question is whether the European aggregates, so the EU and the Eurozone, whether they are done by weighing together the countries with a relative weight expressed in euros or in purchasing power standards. That gives then a difference only for the European aggregates. You can view charts. You can save this to Excel. Let's do this quickly. But you can choose whether you want to download only this series, or if you have selected several ones, the entire set of your selection. So I think that is fairly self-explanatory, and I don't need to go much more into this. I said that the original content in here is mainly the forecast. There is also the fact that we are linking back data across vintages of accounting systems. So also the length of the series is something that you do not necessarily find everywhere else. And we are also having a certain amount of series that are produced by us that you would also not find elsewhere. To give you the most important example, we have a chapter 17, which is the cyclical adjustment of public finance. And there you get the structural balance and the net lending, net borrowing adjusted for the cyclical components. So that is where we do an estimate of what part of the economic development is due to the economic cycle, and we correct this conjuncture, this business cycle element from the government finance statistics in order to assess the fundamental position of the country's fiscal position. And this is done here. This is not statistics in the very narrow sense, because there's a model behind for identifying the cyclical component. But that's what we are doing, and what we are publishing here, and that's something that statistical offices would not do because it's not part of their business. So I said we have the forecast, we have we have long series, and we are having some proprietary variables that we have produced. I'll go back from the interface to quickly show you the text files. So we say we have the zip text files here. There is another interesting element that could be exploited depending on your interest, and that is that we also have zip text files of earlier releases. I'll say a word about that in a moment. Let's have a look at the zip text file. Yeah. So here you have the overview of the different chapters and the elements inside, and you can download one chapter or the other, or you go for the entire set of zip text files. I'll open that and show you what's inside. So let's take MECO 01, that is the first chapter, that was population and employment. That would presumably be, okay, now, well, we have the text file, but of course you can import that into any software you'd like to use. So we have a code for the variable. We have the country subchapter, which is the subchapter in which in the tree this variable is found. Title, unit, and then we have the data starting from 1960 to the last observation, which now is 2020. And you have so the most interesting elements are of course the country. So here it's the European Union, and the variable is population, and the unit in which it's expressed is 1,000 persons. Voila. So you have that for the entire chapter, and then for the entire 18 chapters that we were presenting in the online interface. I should say one or two words about the features of the forecast. So the forecast is normally 2 years ahead, so it's not a long-term forecast. But of course, that's the horizon where you can do relatively reliable forecasts. Beyond that, you get more into scenario techniques. We are covering more than 100 variables with the forecast. Of course, if you want to forecast public finance, you need to forecast the main macroeconomic variables. So we're having forecasts for GDP, for investment, for exports, for imports, and then for the government finance variables. We are covering all the European Union countries and some of the important countries outside the EU. On the occasion of the forecast, which is, so we're doing 2 big forecasts per year, one in spring and one in autumn. The spring one is, I think, foreseen for publication sometime in early May. So that the data that is currently available from the last full forecast is from the November release. MECO Online is in principle updated only twice per year when we're doing a full forecast. So of course, in the meantime, statistical data is arriving and is being revised. That would then be available from the statistical offices. We keep MECO at the status of the forecast as it was last published, and we'll up to the next update then in May. At the time of the release of the forecast, there is a press conference and there's an awful lot of material provided with the forecast. So MECO is just the numerical outlet. You have a lot of analysis which is connected to the forecast production, and where we give our view on what the forecast means and how we have arrived at the forecast. And I close this. I briefly go back and I show you that on the zip text files of earlier releases, you have exactly the same full zip text file. We are going back to spring 2011, and we're having one file for the spring forecast and one for the autumn forecast in each year. So what would be the interest in this data? Well, the forecast, the nice thing is that they are about the future. So you can combine them with other forward-looking variables. You can also look into how as time evolves, how information that has arrived in the meantime has confirmed or is contradicting what the last forecast we did. You could look for whether you find forecast predictors. You could also look for whether you find any consequences from the forecast publication visible in other data. You could compare it with other softer indicators, like, for instance, confidence surveys, like the one that Christian has just been presenting. So I think there's quite a lot of things one can do with forecast data if that were something you are interested in and that you would find useful for combining with other data. And I think with that, I give back to you, Simon.
Thank you very much. We received some questions, and is your data also available in Eurostat?
No, it's not, because it's forecasts, and forecasts again involves a certain amount of assumptions, certain discretion, and that is not what the statistical offices normally do. So it's not available at Eurostat.
Okay. You said on this website they can combine it with different variables. Maybe you can say a few more words on this because it was not so clear.
No, what I meant there is that I was just in the interface. I was just showing, say, the selection for one variable, but you could also select several ones at a time and then export them in this interface to an Excel file. If you have selected 3 variables, you don't have to select one after the other and export them to 3 different Excel files. But I think that for the purposes of this competition, anyway, the most useful way for consuming the data would be using the zip text files and not going through the interface. The interface I've shown for showing you, for giving you an idea of the data contents.
And there's also one more question. Is there any evaluation of the accuracy of the forecasts?
Yes, there is. I think on our website we have given a link to the forecast page on our website. There should also be some document on that. Of course, I mean there is a bit of, let's say, competition between institutions producing forecasts. So we are monitoring the forecast accuracy ourselves. You have to do, if you have to redo the forecast half a year later, of course you're constantly monitoring how well your forecast has performed. On aggregate, my impression is that our forecasts are, the precision of our forecasts is not worse than that of any other of the big forecast producing institutions.
Okay, great, thank you. When I think of the forecast and the actual results, what kind of problem could be solved with it? Do you have any inspiration for teams, what they could work on?
What problems they could solve with the forecast? Well, I know what problems we are solving with the forecast, and that is the implementation of the Stability and Growth Pact, and to find out whether a country is in an excessive deficit or not. Well, that's the type of things we are doing with it. I'm not sure I have a lot of inspiration, but I think that it would be interesting to look for whether the forecast can be combined with data that is a bit outside the macroeconomic domain, because we are looking into that ourselves, and so we know how what we're thinking about investment or the exports would influence the forecast. But whether there is something else outside that focus that could be put into an interesting relation with forecast data, whatever. If there were data on press clippings or on energy prices or on some confidence indicators from surveys in the population, that could be combined with that. That is something that I could imagine, but that I'm not having time, energy, and maybe not the competence to do myself.
Mm-hmm. Well, what I could imagine is to create some really nice visualizations of your data. I think participants could maybe start with this and then start digging into the data.
Yep. Yeah, definitely. I mean, the visualization and possibly combining it also not in an analytic but in a presentational sense with other data that is a bit future oriented. That could also be an interesting path to follow. Okay,
great. Thank you very much, Ingo. Before I pass the floor to the European Investment Bank, I would just like to show one thing what was asked in the chat box, which is the previous winners. Of course, you can see everything which was done in 2018 and 2017 if you click on the link. Here I would propose you to have a look at the video so you can see how the event unfolds, how it is there on stage. And here we have the winning teams. Last year we had 4 challenges, and here we have also links to the teams. So if you want to see what they are doing, we have a short description, and of course you can check them out online. And now I would like to pass the floor to Isabel Tres from the European Investment Bank. Maybe Isabel, you can share your screen.
Okay.
Thank you.
This is my screen?
Yes.
Yes. Good morning, everybody. I'm Isabel Tres. I'm working in the communication department of the European Investment Bank, and we are happy to be partner of the 3rd session of the EUdatathon. First, I will start with a short presentation of the bank, and then I will guide you through the data set we are presenting for the challenge. So, the European Investment Bank is the Bank of the European Union. The group has two parts, the European Investment Bank and the European Investment Fund, which is specialized in of the financing of small business and mid-caps. It is owned by the 28 member states of the EU, and our mission is to implement the EU policy goals inside and outside the EU. So what does it mean in practice? The EIB raises money on the international capital markets, and then it lends these funds for investment projects. This makes the bank the largest multilateral lender in the world. So we do not finance every project. How do we select them? The projects are targeting 4 main areas: innovation and skills, small businesses, climate, and infrastructure. The project must not only be bankable, but comply with economic, technical, and environmental and social standards. So I will not give you a lot of figures on our activity, because I think you will have enough to do with the data sets. If you want more information on our activity, you can go through our website and find a lot of documents published in digital format. And now I will present you the data set. So it is the first year the AIB is partner of the Datathon, and for the challenge, we have 2 data sets, one on the EIB financing activity, and the other one on EIB Investment Survey. The EIB financing activity dataset is a list of finance projects containing the information on all our contracts signed since the beginning of our activity in 1958. This is data we produce from our database, and it is published on our website. The data that are available in this set is the localization of the projects, region and countries, and the countries are grouped in regions where we have mandates. Then we have the activity sector with 13 main sector groups that goes from agriculture to water, and these groups are defined from groupment of NACE activity codes. And then the date of signature of the contracts and the financing amount. I will show you later and with a demo. And I go to the second data set. So this data set is about EIB Investment Survey done by the Economic Department of the EIB. The survey gathers information on investment activities by non-financial companies, and also the financing requirements and the difficulties they face. The objective is to design, to build a panel of observation to support time series analysis for the 3 years of the survey. It has been conducted on a representative sample of about 12,000 companies, non-financial companies, covering all the 28 countries of the European Union, and also covering 4 activity sectors: manufacturing, services, construction, and infrastructure. And it targets also 4 classes of company size, from small and medium-sized businesses to larger corporates. So on this data set, it's not The raw data at company level is not published for confidentiality reasons. It is only aggregated data in this dimension, but it contains 61 indicators that I will show you on the demo. So if we go on the first data set, you can access this page from the projects and finance projects section of our website, multi-criteria list, and filter all the data with the information I gave you. So for example, if I take the last year and the regions. And also I wanted to mention in the grouping of the sector, we have a sector called credit lines. And this is a sector corresponding to the finance providing via financial intermediaries to SMEs that is done by the AIB. And if I take there, so the data set is accessible in a table. And once you have done the filter, but you can also download all the historical data. It's available in an Excel format. Here I show you. Oh, nothing. That means I don't know why I don't. Okay, and this is the format of the table with all the information: name, region, country, sector, dates, and amounts of the contract signed. And the sector there, as I explained, is a grouping used by the EIB based on NACE codification corresponding to the sector we want to highlight. For the second data set, the EIB Investment Survey. So we access this page from the section About Us, Economic Research, and Survey and Data. And here you can download the data. You get it in a table. So the survey has several questions turned into indicators. We have 61 indicators. The list is shown in the filter here. On investment activities, on investment constraints, something blocked. My computer is slow. Okay. And once you have selected your indicator, it can be downloaded in CSV format. Okay, I selected very few indicators, but you can also download the 61. And you have all the data here. So the data includes country averages and averages for each company size or sector within each country. And as I explained, it's not we cannot go to the company level because of confidentiality reasons. So this is the data that you can download for the challenge. And if you have a question, I'm available to answer to a question.
So thank you very much, Isabel. So there was one question about the NACE codes. What does it mean?
It's the European codification about the industry activity codes that was shown in the presentation also before by the ECFIN direction, and it's, well, I don't remember it's a nomenclature d'activité, something like that, but I don't remember exactly the.
Okay, thank you. You showed that there are also projects for climate change, right? Or
yes.
Can you maybe say a few words about this?
Yes, the project for climate change, it's what we finance, but on the data set, we cannot select this project. It's only based, I can go back to the criteria list. It's mixed in the energy sector, and some of the other might be found in urban development or even water. It's spread throughout all the sector we have.
Okay. The reason I say this is because we also have a third challenge, which is tackling climate change, and I think the data from the European Investment Bank could help there also to tackle this third challenge.
Yes.
Well, one more question about the licensing. So if participants want to reuse it, do they need to mention you, or can they reuse it freely?
They can use it freely, but we will be happy if they can mention also it's sourced from the AIB. But it's open data, and they can use it. Yes.
Okay. And on the screen we see display in English, French, and German. Is the data also available in different languages or just in English?
What is available in the two other languages will be the region names, countries, and sectors. The name of the project itself is not available. It's normally in English, and it's not translated. And for the investment survey, it's everything in English. Okay,
great. So thank you very much. And I would also like to thank all the other speakers for their time and effort to do this presentation. And I think already today we saw a wide variety of data sets, and I could even imagine to combine the data sets from ECFIN, the European Central Bank, and the European Investment Bank, the different surveys and the forecasting to get a completely new app with really nice visualizations. So I think today we opened up a lot of interesting data sets and a lot of possibilities what could be tackled with those data sets. And of course, you can contact us at any time here on the website on Contact Us. Please write us a message if you have any problems, if you have any questions about the competition. And with this, I would like to close this webinar and thank all the participants. Thank you for your questions, and especially a big thank to all our partners who support us all the time and for their nice presentations. Thank you very much. Bye.